The year is 1830. On a stormy night on the Tasman Sea, sailors fight to keep their ship afloat against the fury of the waves. It's then that we meet Thomas Munro, a lay minister who set sail from England to New Zealand on an important mission. However, at this moment, his priority is survival. Fortunately, only one person was a victim of the storm. At dawn, the crew says goodbye to the deceased in a makeshift funeral. Thomas keeps his distance. Although the sailors invite him to speak, the man recites a speech about the immensity of the ocean and the insignificance of human beings in the face of nature. A bad day can be enough to be swept from this world as if you were nothing. During the journey, the protagonist spends his time writing and drawing everything he observes. Now he is sketching the young Maui, who is with them. Catley, the ship's captain, introduces him as Uenuku, the eldest son of their supreme chief, who asks the captain to teach him to sail. Under Uenuku's guidance, they manage to spot land for the first time. While the other sailors get to shore in a boat, Thomas is busy lowering his horse from the ship. It's a difficult task, but it's worth it. Once settled on the beach, Thomas shows his drawings to Uenuku, while he explains that the paint on his face represents the story of his life, at least so far. Upon entering the jungle, the minister accidentally strays from the group and comes across a young native island woman. She seems hostile at first, but lowers her guard when the man invites her to pet his horse. However, the tension rises when other natives armed with spears appear. Kigley arrives just in time, communicating with the Maori in their language and apologizing for Thomas's intrusion. Both sides retreat to their territories while the sailors prepare to continue their journey the next day. The protagonist insists on returning to the jungle, arguing that if he's going to live in New Zealand, he must get used to its land. Although the captain wants to send him with Uenuku, he is nowhere to be found. Thomas explores on his own, marveling at everything he sees. When he finds a safe place, he decides to rest for a moment. It turns out that a battle between two enemy tribes is happening right next door. In the midst of the chaos, the protagonist sees the young woman from before and comes to her defense, although it seems he has chosen the losing side. Wano appears with his father and the chief of his tribe, Akatar. The minister asks for clemency for the young woman and her husband, which surprises Kataragawa, since he had never before seen a Briton defend someone who was not of his own blood. Catley comes to the rescue, reminding Kataragawa that thanks to his crew, his son learned to sail. The chief lets Thomas leave, but he still insists on behalf of the young woman and the other native. In exchange for them being pardoned, he offers his precious horse. He clarifies that one horse is only worth one life, and since he doesn't want to decide, once this is done, Akategwa fulfills his part of the deal, allowing the native woman to go with the sailors. On the ship, Thomas takes her to his cabin and tells her she can rest there. The young woman, still dejected by the loss of her husband, begins to harm herself with a sharp stone. After stopping her, the minister stays to watch over her for the rest of the night. Later, the crew arrives at their original destination, the Edworth colony. Thomas says goodbye to the captain and the sailors who brought him. Catley foresees that he will have a lot of work, since in that area they need the word of the Lord very much. Although he still doesn't know the Maori woman's name, the minister takes care of her while giving her space to mourn. However, the first time he leaves her alone to visit the local church, he finds her sweating cold from a wound he hadn't seen. When night falls, the minister meets his new neighbors at a dinner, where they tell him about the ambitious project they have in Edworth. They leased those lands from a Maori chief, so they shouldn't have problems with the locals. Although they have been hearing rumors about a warlord who is laying waste to other tribes, Thomas soon recognizes him as Katarwa, whom he already had the pleasure of meeting. Talking about the topic, he asks the group's doctor to examine the Maori woman's wound, but he refuses, arguing that his medical supplies are very scarce and are only intended for the citizens of Edworth. After dinner, Bethany, the daughter of one of the colonists, approaches Thomas in secret to guide him to the cabin of Charlotte, a doctor who handles the cases that no one else wants. She initially refuses to help him because she's in the middle of a birth, but a little later she shows up at Thomas's residence and examines the Maori woman's wound. The doctor recognizes the young woman as Rangi May, the daughter of a tribal chief named Mayui, the owner of these lands. Charlotte not only manages to heal Rangi Mai, but also helps her with her grief, since she knows the Maori language and customs. At dawn, the settlement's bell rings like never before, alerting everyone to the arrival of a tribe. They are the men of Maianui, Rangi Mai's father, although far from greeting him with appreciation. She demands revenge. And revenge she will have, because her father brings with him some of Akategawa's men, among whom could be her husband's killer. As Rangi Mai dismisses them, Maianui strikes them down with a blow. Thomas tries to intervene, but Charlotte warns him that they should not get involved in these matters. When Maianui is finished with the suspects, Charlotte points out Thomas as his daughter's savior. In gratitude, Maianui leaves his daughter with him so she can learn from him, as well as a Maori warrior named Pajirua to protect her. Impressed, the protagonist realizes that Charlotte is respected by the natives, and she admits that is the same reason she is despised by her own people. Along with Rangi and Pajirua, Thomas begins to hold mass in the settlement, making the Maori people interested in Christianity. Speaking of interest, Pajiru and Bethan cannot avoid exchanging flirtatious glances. With the anniversary dance of Edworth just around the corner, Charlotte teaches Rangi Mai to dance in her own way, replicating the movements of the trees in the wind. But as soon as the Maori begin to get used to this place, Reginald and Buamp, the highest-ranking colonists, make it clear to Thomas that his natives are not welcome in the house of the Lord. That same night, Bethan gives herself to Pairua, right in the house of the Lord. Following the protagonist's English lessons, Rangi Mai communicates with Patch, the settlement supply seller. However, he refuses to serve her, stating that he only talks to people of his class. On the night of the dance, Charlotte gives Rangi Mai her late husband's favorite dress to wear to the event. Despite not being welcome, the Maori woman joins the dance floor with the minister and ends up being the best dancer. During the celebration, Mr. Senyorisham notices that his daughter Bethan was briefly absent without his permission. Leaving the dance, Thomas and Rangi Mai head home, smiling until they discover something horrible in the chapel: Pajirua's corpse. Furious, the minister demands an explanation from Bisham and his colleagues, who excuse themselves by saying they will catch the Maori's murderer. The next day, the colonists accuse Patet and beat him. When the protagonist demands evidence, Reginald claims that the man simply confessed, and who wouldn't after a beating? While Rangjima and Charlotte prepare Pajirua's body, Bahani comes to say goodbye. Her tears surprise the native woman, since she didn't expect a foreigner to be able to love one of their own so much. Mounted on Bethan's horse, Thomas, Rangyai, and Charlotte go to deliver the body of the deceased. At that moment, Reginald and Buham approach to inform him that Pache died in his cell upon arriving in Australia. How convenient! Upon their arrival at Maianui's village, the Maori people receive Pajirua's body with laments. During the meeting of elders, Tomas persuades Maianui not to seek revenge on the colonists with violence, but to attack their pockets, that is, to raise the rent on their land. During his stay in the village, the protagonist can observe Maori customs up close and uses them as inspiration for his drawings. Later, when the minister is distracted by some loud noises, one of the elders manages to steal his sketchbook. The origin of the noises is none other than the Maori practicing their aim with muskets, so the minister teaches them a faster way to reload. When he looks through the notebook, the elder comes across a rather macabre drawing, a woman and a young boy agonizing. Thomas only draws what he sees with his own eyes. When they demand an explanation from the man, he is forced to talk about his past as a soldier in the British Army, a stage he had sworn to forget. It turns out that he led an attack on what he thought was an enemy fortress, fighting blindly due to the amount of smoke in the field. However, when the smoke cleared, Thomas and his men realized that they were not storming a fortress, but a simple school. They had massacred a group of women and children. Since then, Thomas has carried an enormous guilt and has sought redemption in God, although deep down he will always feel unworthy of forgiveness. After hearing his story, Maianui and the elders confess that they have also killed women and children, but they feel no remorse. For them, only blood redeems blood. The protagonist returns dejected to his resting place, and Charlotte approaches to comfort him. The next day, the minister receives the unexpected visit of Catley and his crew, who came to supply the Maoris with weapons. They clearly plan to go to war with Egua. Fearing this, the minister warns Maianui that a war is exactly what the colonists want, so that the natives exterminate each other and they can keep their lands. Instead, the minister offers to make a truce with Akataregua. Thomas leaves on Ketley's ship, and on the way discovers that Rangjimai has hidden in his cabin. Upon reaching Akatarewa's territory, the protagonist accepts the peace offering suggested by the native woman, although he forbids her from accompanying him. He doesn't want her husband's tragedy to be repeated. Thanks to Unuku, the minister has an audience with Akatargua and presents his peace offering. The native chief laughs, reminding him that this land is steeped in blood, just like England. All the more reason Thomas asks him not to make the same mistakes as the British and to protect his people. Unfortunately, Akataregua does not understand any language other than violence. War it will be. While the protagonist returns with his horse with permission from Wenuku, Ketley shows the new muskets to Katarewa, pointing out that prices have gone up. This doesn't please the native chief. The Maori people launch themselves against the sailors, and Thomas is not spared, being intercepted by a warrior whom he cannot overcome. While the minister came seeking peace, she came to avenge her husband's death. For their part, Akatarewa's tribe takes possession of the sailor's ship and sets sail for enemy lands. Thanks to the horse, Thomas and Rangjimai arrive first and warn Maianui of the imminent danger. Despite being advised to leave, Thomas and Charlotte decide to stay with the Maori in Maianui, who bless them as members of their tribe. The natives get to work preparing their village's defense and performing hakas to boost morale. Finally, Akatarewa's tribe arrives at the coast, attacking with the ship's cannons and sending their best warriors to the front. Although they are outnumbered, the Maori in Maianui compensate with their ingenuity, using traps and smoke to surprise their enemies. Thomas and Charlotte go into action with him shooting and her reloading. Together, they manage to take down several enemies until it's their turn to get hit. Enraged by his loss, the protagonist rushes into the battlefield, attacking with such ferocity that Rangjimai has to stop him. Meanwhile, Maianui's men manage to board the enemy ship, eliminating Akatarewa's greatest advantage. Seeing that his son is wounded, Akatarwa finally raises the white flag and accepts being executed. Before the honors are performed, Maianui confesses that he would have liked to live in peace. The next is Wenuku, but at the last moment, Rangjinai claims him as her husband, saving him from certain death and ensuring peace between their tribes. After this, Maianui and Rangjimi thank Thomas, recognizing him as one of their own. 4 years later, Thomas, now with tribal paint on his face, acts as an advisor to the Maori tribe in a negotiation with a British delegation that wishes to establish a commercial post in Edworth. As the negotiation does not turn out as expected, the British officer asks the protagonist why he betrayed his own people.